Hello, guys. This is Cody Gordon Lee Gamera. I am a previous winner and the host of the Big Brother Universe, brought to you by Crash Cracks on my personal YouTube channel. This is going to be our Big Brother deep dive with winner of season 17, Can You Survive Big Brother, Dylan McKay, also a player in Big Brother Legends, the 13th installment in the series. And we'll be asking him some questions today as we do a deep dive on his gameplay overall, and please enjoy. You touched on when you were asked back, you were very excited to have another opportunity at the game. One of the things you brought up was you were really excited to use those social skills that you harbor. Coming from myself as the host and a previous winner, your social performance in season 17 is easily in the upper echelon of social games. What do you think separates yours from others?
Yeah, I think what sets my social game apart is that it's really rooted in a lot of genuine behavior. I think that for me, I am someone who really does love and enjoy connecting with people in real life. I would consider myself to be fairly, sensitive and attuned to other people's feelings as well as, how other people make me feel. I think a strength of mine is, it probably sounds pretentious or inauthentic to even just be saying this, but is my ability to not be too egotistical, not be too cocky, not ever come across like I'm the one who has the plan, who's gonna do this. Like, I genuinely value other people's input and I value my relationships and connections with people. And so in the game, showing people value is very important. And yes, I have my own goal and my own plan, and I am, you could consider it manipulative in a game like this, but I am trying to edge and push and shift things towards where I want them to go. But I think you have to be looking at like how you have those conversations with people and showing people respect and value. And if you do that, then they'll respect and value you back, and that might get you through one more day in the game.
Being you only had to win the last comp to win the entire game, looking at past winners, what sets you apart immediately is you're the only winner who won purely on a social game. I have to assume that feels massively rewarding in of itself. Would you like to touch on how it was navigating to the end purely on social capabilities?
I think that's one of the trickier things about this being that it was a Survivor hybrid with Big Brother. The majority of the voting was Survivor style. In Survivor style voting, anyone can switch allegiances at the flip of a switch with just right there at tribal, and you can just change who you're voting for. And so the game is kind of always at this hyper speed of social fluidity, where allegiances and alliances can just change on a whim. And so I think it is hyper important to build a connection with everyone at some point in the game, because ultimately there's going to be moments where you're going to be on the wrong side of the coin with an alliance, and they're going to be deciding who to vote out. And if it comes down to Dylan and X person, if they feel like they had a slightly better connection with you, if that's what it comes down to, they're going to vote the other person out. So my goal in the game was really to have that strong kind of social relationship with as many people as I could. But I would like to win challenges too. I just don't, for some reason.
As you mentioned in your winner interview, everyone was worried about physical threats throughout the entire game. Do you think, since you've broken the mold of a constant state that winners usually carry, being heavy comp players, that players in the future may look more for social threats now and not just always physical?
Sure, I'd love for my game to have that kind of like lasting impact, that people decide like, oh, the way Dylan played it is a good way to play it. I think that winning challenges is a great way to play it too, though. Trust me, I would have liked to win more challenges than I did. Naturally, if someone is winning challenges and you cannot vote for that person routinely when it comes to tribal, I think the moment that person doesn't win, you're like in the mindset of, we got to get that person out. So it's like, it's not really beneficial to win immunity in that way. It does put a target on your back, but like obviously you need that safety. So there's like a lot of great, like if you can pull it off and you can just go win challenges, like I think that's still a great way to get to the end of a game. But I think with Survivor there's just a lot, every vote you're kind of on edge because anyone can shift, and so you have to have a relationship with like everyone in the game.
As you mentioned in your winner interview, you and Vanessa at the beginning till about halfway through the merge played totally separate games. When you realized she was still in the game with you around Final 6 after Martin's departure, would you say she was your lock to take to Final 2 at that moment, or did any part of you think of taking someone else?
I never thought of taking someone else. Not like the whole game for me was get to the end with Vanessa, and if we get to a position of crossroads, propel Vanessa further forward than me. Until, of course, it's the both of us at the end. We're like, I gotta try to beat her, right? But ultimately, that was my game plan the whole time. How do I take this puzzle piece of like my tribe and my alliance, and this puzzle piece of her tribe, her alliance, and bring those puzzle pieces together in an organic way that wasn't coming from me? So my game plan was to, get myself into her alliance that we just so happened to coexist in. And then when my blindside on Haley failed, the puzzle pieces shifted, and we lost Brandon at that stage in the game, who was someone that we had wanted to work with, and I kind of saw as being a bigger picture of our alliance. And things totally flipped, and it actually became advantageous for me to shift back towards my alliance with Haley and Anaya, and then angling my old alliance into a position that would organically want to include my wife, Vanessa. We should bring her into the alliance. I wanted that to come from other people in my alliance. I'm actually very proud of how that came together.
After the failed blindside with Haley, we see everyone pulling you aside and telling you how upset they are with you. I'd like to mirror this to later in the game when post Martin's eviction, we see everyone coming to you up in the bedroom upstairs and asking what's next, or what do you think of this, Dylan? This is an extremely rare thing to see, where we see a player go from a full wounded dog to leading the pack. How do you feel this was able to happen?
Yeah, this one was wild, because I think it does speak a lot to the character of some of the people I'm playing the game with, because when I did attempt to blindside Haley and it didn't go well, she was so mad at me, and I thought there's no way in hell we're working together after this. But she fought tooth and nail to be like, no, let's sort this out, let's figure this out, and let's figure out how to move forward together. And I guess that was a strength of the relationship that we had from prior to that. That was something that she felt like she could trust me enough to want to repair with me, even after I had tried to blindside her. And I guess that helped because, I kind of took the angle of oh, well, now I'm on the, everyone's pissed at me and I'm on the bottom, and now you're on the bottom because everyone was just willing to vote for you. And so we kind of were able to repair and rebound that. But then I think what allowed me to get back in the good graces of a lot of the other players in the game and to kind of be in a position of power after that was really my, when I looked at that situation, the failed blindside, everyone sitting around tribal was kind of I think everyone was on their heels a little bit. The reason they were upset with me was because the plan failed. Had the plan worked, I don't think anyone would have been upset with me. They'd have been like, oh, cool. But now they're put in a position of conflict because of me. Everyone's feeling embarrassed and a little in shock. What was important and key for me to do in that moment, even with people I didn't have very strong relationships with, was to go to them and say, I take accountability. I'm sorry I put you in that position. You can't have an ego in those moments. As soon as you're trying to say, if you get defensive or you try to be combative with people or you try to take credit for things, people don't want to work with you when you're like that. You have to be willing to say, it was my fuck up, it was my thing, and take that off of them and be like, oh, okay, well, I appreciate you coming and talking to me, or I appreciate you taking responsibility for how that situation made me feel. And I really think that's what made people feel safe and want to trust me again, was just that I said, hey, it's on me. That situation sucked. Sorry I put you into that situation. And I think people are naturally okay, well, if it's on Dylan, and then Dylan is got a fine relationship again with Haley, then in a weird way, we're happy to follow him if he's gonna make us feel safe like that. And so I think that's what played to my benefit after that. But yeah, I mean, it was a crazy turn of events that it did rotate to the point where I was willing to go I wanted to go take a nap, and people just kept knocking on the door to talk to me, and wanted to know what I wanted to do. It's well, my last plan failed, and you guys were embarrassed to be in that moment, but but I still made people feel safe enough and comfortable enough that like through failure they'll be okay with me.
You mentioned at the end of your winner interview, you would think of what someone wants to hear and then say that to them to gain their trust. When doing so, do you ever feel like you needed to be a little truthful with someone when lying, or do you feel telling them something completely fabricated was also okay since you already were feeling a sense of control in the game?
Yeah, good question. So for me, I feel like when you're talking with someone, it always needs to be rooted in some level of truth. I would say I never got to the point where I felt like, oh, I'm so comfortable, like I can just lie to people now. Like that was never every interaction with everyone in the game like has to come from some place of sincerity, or even if you're trying to like kind of dupe somebody, it still has to come from somewhat of a level of respect. No one wants to feel like you were just being dishonest or treating them like shit. Like ultimately, I still care about and value everyone that I'm playing this game with, and I don't want to make someone feel like a piece of shit, you know? I'm doing a lot of asking questions, and I'm coming from a place of let me get on page with you, and I'll come and kind of help you out if you'll reveal information to me. And so instead of me just like going and lying and saying, oh, here's who we're voting for, like I would never really do that. I would usually just say like, where's your head at? What are you thinking? And if they respond with a name and if they're giving me something, then we can go from there. We can have a conversation.
Now that it has been 4 months since the conclusion of your season, how do you feel reflecting back on the moves you made and the gameplay overall?
When me and Vanessa turned to the group and then said we were married, and to have everyone like show us so much support and love and cheer for us made me really proud that we were able to play a game that didn't leave people feeling like really bitter, upset at us. And maybe they're I think because it's a game, yes, there are going to be people that are, and like sure, there's so many moments people are going to be upset about certain things in the game. But at least from my perspective, I feel happy to have gotten to meet and play the game with everyone that I did. I feel happy with like the choices and the decisions that I made in the game, and I don't regret any of those choices. And so that's really the best case scenario, is to come out of it and look at it and be like, look, I went for it. I went full send. I feel very proud of the decisions and choices I made in the game.
Also, if Vanessa had been eliminated, who would have been your new final two pick if it came to your choosing?
If Vanessa had been eliminated, who would have been my new final two pick? This is a hard question because you have to look at like at what point in the timeline did it happen, who was still in the game. If we're just talking like from a Final Four perspective, it's like hard to answer because like in the Final Four, like naturally at that point, like Haley was out of the game. It was Shondell and Anaya. Anaya was my day one in the game, but she was everyone else's day one too. So it's hard because I would have said Anaya, but the way it played out when we were in the Final Four, it became so clear to me that Anaya had ditched her relationship with me in favor of Vanessa. Like at that time in the game, if she's my day one, like we have a clear option, which would be to get Vanessa out because Shondell was safe. She wasn't on board with that, didn't put any effort into like maintaining that with me. So like, yeah, based on that circumstance, like I wouldn't, if I were in that circumstance and Vanessa just wasn't my wife and Anaya was my day one and she wasn't willing to take me, then I wouldn't have been willing to take her. But going into that moment, it would have been her for sure. But yeah, she ditched that alliance pretty quick in that moment. So I guess that is one of those moments where like in reflection, I'm sure she just felt like she had a better chance at beating, Shondell and Vanessa at that moment. And that's why she wasn't willing to like try to figure out a solution to get me to the end with her. So it's kind of a loaded question. But in reflection, looking back on the game, I think Haley was most definitely like my like she actually treated our relationship like a ride or die, and I didn't give enough stock to that early, but I was learning it with each progressive vote. And by the time like when Shondell did pull out the idol and blindsided us and voted Haley out, she would have been that person for me. But at the beginning of the game, it was me, Haley, and Anaya, and Haley wrote my name down at the beginning, and I wrote her name down and tried to blindside her. Whereas me and Anaya had like a stronger thing throughout. So like, in my mind at least, like we never went against each other like publicly. So yes, I like it would have been one of those two, Anaya and Haley. We worked together from the beginning, so which was pretty sick. It was cool that we were able to like fall apart and rebuild and kind of make it as far as we did together as an alliance. That was pretty sweet.